Hi everyone, it's Haley. In this video, we're going to talk about the full moon in Sagittarius, which is coming through on June 3rd at 11:41 p.m. Eastern Time. And this is a very interesting lunation. And when I was looking at the chart, just kind of like the word volatile came to mind, just like a lot of kind of transformative, potentially kind of fiery, redefining, reshuffling, really strong energy coming through, which of course can manifest in our personal lives and our collective in very different ways, ranging from like rage outbursts, specifically in the family context, or kind of more inward, kind of like cathartic, really transformative, kind of thinking about new directions that we want to go in. Very powerful energy. And so the moon is going to be at 13 degrees of Sagittarius, opposing the sun at 13 Gemini. So it's occurring across this Gemini Sagittarius axis. And in this chart, it has a late Capricorn rising. So that means that the ruler of this lunation is going to be Saturn. So first, I'm just going to unpack some of the kind of main aspects and kind of more characteristics of this lunation, and then we're going to shuffle the tarot and get some maybe potentially more subtle or specific messages for the energetics surrounding this full moon. So like I said, the ruler of this full moon in Sagittarius is going to be Saturn, which is already a little bit interesting because Sagittarius is a sign that's ruled by Jupiter, which is quite different, has a lot of different qualities than Saturn. So it's kind of interesting, this interplay of energies that we're dealing with. And so interestingly, both the moon and the sun are moving into a square with Saturn, which is, we just have this very strong kind of mutable energy. And the lunation is happening across the 6th and the 12th house axis. So potentially themes around, unfortunately, kind of like mental health crises, feelings of just kind of feeling like you're spinning out or disconnected to reality, kind of mania-like feelings, followed by kind of just like a disillusionment sort of thing. And interestingly, there is this interplay between Mars and the moon in this chart. And so Mars is in Leo, forming a pretty tight trine to the moon. So we're kind of seeing, again, this like very fiery, kind of impulse, instinct-driven, potentially kind of conflict, or just kind of this very kind of pointed, transformative energy. Additionally, because Pluto is rising in this chart, it's going to be rising over the ascendant. And also Venus is on the descendant, so opposing the ascendant. So kind of a lot of drama relationally was kind of what I saw, specifically in family relationships, and kind of the urge or the need to kind of cut ties, and kind of struggles around seeing the self in relationship to a community or to a family that has kind of like a long history to it, especially with Venus at that kind of closing out its transit of Cancer in the 7th house, kind of relationships that have run their course. There kind of feels to be like a strong emphasis around kind of burning down old connections, cutting ties, the setting of old relationships. And that can be tricky, especially in the family context, because they have, there's a lot of expectation around obligation and feeling like you owe other people things, kind of feeling bound or restricted in some way with all those kind of Saturnian themes. But in mutable signs, I mean, it's very interesting because it's not like, with Saturn here, it's like kind of not really like a dictator energy, but just kind of like a more transient urge to break free from something that may not be a threat. So we might kind of watch around being like very reactive, if we find ourselves kind of lashing out and feeling like we need to assert power, or kind of these kind of more subconscious Sagittarius, because the moon in Sagittarius is going to be in the 12th house. So kind of these like more subterranean impulses to just kind of like potentially engage in not necessarily dangerous activities, but just kind of like assert one's ability to have freedom and to roam. And then Saturn is kind of the sun and the moon, the luminaries are kind of checking Saturn in this way, like, no, I want to go here, kind of like asserting movement, but Saturn's kind of like not really challenging it. So we could be kind of watching around conflicts that kind of like we have to pick our battles wisely around this full moon. I will say that, because there could be a lot of booby traps around just like things that we think we really need to fight really hard for, and that feel like life or death, like we're fighting for principles, we're fighting for what we think, kind of like our ideology, and it feels really urgent, and like we need to really go in there and make our opinions known to all of these people, because maybe just like really assert to them, no, I'm different, these are the ways I've changed. This is this kind of plutonic desire to burn down my whole life and start again. Yes, there's this grand fire trine in the dark houses with the moon, the Mars, and then the asteroid Chiron. And so kind of this kind of like simmer in dark places. And of course that could be really productive and helpful, but we need to kind of, again, I guess the issue is always bringing awareness to it so that we don't have this kind of rage simmering in very subterranean parts of our being, so that could lash out at the people closest to us. Okay, so let's shuffle the tarot now and see if we can get some more messages. What are some of the messages or the themes for the collective around the full moon in Sag? What are the, oops, we got one that flipped. Okay, what are some of the energies that are coming through? Wow, okay. What are some of the energetics around this Sagittarius full moon? Okay, let's get maybe one more. Can we have some clues around some more specific energetics around this Sag full moon? Okay. And actually, before I get into the tarot, I wanted to read the Sabian symbol for 7 degrees of Pisces, because that's the degree where Saturn is going to be at this at the time of this lunation. And again, Saturn is the chart ruler, and I thought it was very interesting. Okay, so the Sabian symbol is called a girl blowing a bugle, which I'm not entirely sure what a bugle is, but I think it's some sort of megaphone situation. Okay, this shows sounding the call, rallying people together, knowing when to speak or, quote, blow a bugle, to awaken others, to wake up to realities going on in the world, join some cause, etc. Perhaps you feel the need to wake up those around you, or perhaps be woken yourself. When situations get bogged down in emotional or rational complexity, and everyone just needs to be rallying and going for the objective, you may be the one to let everyone know. Sometimes this symbol can show someone who makes a lot of noise, justified or unjustified, and they can get people moving. Using simple, receptive innocence will get situations back on track. So some of the main themes are sounding the call, awakening all to action, loudspeakers, telephones, and announcements, rise and shine, leading the charge, resurrection, which is really interesting given one of the cards that just popped out, which I'll get to in a second, proclamations, whistleblowers, and then kind of at the shadow side, unwarranted and disturbing noise, which I kind of spoke to around this kind of fiery mobilization, showing off, trumpeting about oneself, which let's just see that we have a literal trumpet here, not listening to people, being annoying, interrupting, betraying confidences, and loud voices. So again, there's just kind of like burning down proclamations, especially with the planet Mercury within a degree of Uranus. So kind of, again, that kind of proclamation, exclamation, kind of making like manifesto energy. Okay, so let's see. So that's just something that we can kind of have simmering in the background. So let's again, the trumpet is literally making a declaration. And I think even, yes, the word resurrection was in here in proclamation. So just kind of feeling like some karmic cycle is potentially being activated or coming to a close, and kind of the consequences of previously made actions. We can see like the angel, I think this is the Archangel Gabriel, kind of sounding the trumpet, and these people rising up. And I think the Judgment card actually came up for the last, one of the lastly nations, which is interesting too. Yeah, so kind of the urge to really declare one's self as this pioneering individual out here, kind of like me against the world energy. So we can kind of be aware of that kind of martyrdom, savior complex type thing coming in, especially because within a degree, we have a trine between Venus and Neptune in water signs, which is a very flowing kind of beneficial, sweet aspect, but it can also kind of turn, as it's placed in relational houses, as kind of this need to kind of be this like saint-like figure, which can kind of breed that kind of 12th house Sag kind of resentments and feeling like the need to proselytize or evangelize like our personal ethos or how we're different than others, and kind of beware of the tendency to kind of be preaching and kind of on this high horse, kind of this sort of like missionary energy going in places and maybe picking fights that don't need to be fought just in the name of maybe acting out of our more shadowy or wounded places, which maybe that's an overused word, kind of but anyways, I think it can be helpful. And then we also have the star, beautiful, which is ruled by Aquarius. So again, we have Pluto at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and kind of this potential to kind of birth this more like redemption is kind of the theme I see surrounding this full moon, of kind of this like coming to a peak of the need for a more redemptive or like nourishing reality. But we kind of have to go back, like watch the way that we're going about creating this new reality and make sure it's not kind of using the same systems that we're aiming to overturn or transform. So kind of if we want to create this really beautiful kind of like next version of ourselves, but we're going about like asserting it in a very kind of like dictator, very kind of authoritarian fashion, because we kind of feel like we need to fight all these other people and make them understand. Maybe we can just be aware of that and kind of this more like kind of quiet way of going about this, which quiet is not the word I would use to describe this full moon, but kind of bringing in, if we can, more of those qualities of kind of like tending to the ground underneath our own feet, and kind of tapping into, maybe we don't have to make our dreams public, especially at this full moon, and just kind of maybe keeping a little bit to yourself if you can, around keeping maybe dreams a little bit closer to your heart before sharing them. We also have the Emperor and the King of Pentacles in the reversed position. So again, this kind of, maybe it's, there's a lot of conversation around, you know, like the wounded or the toxic masculine expressions of just kind of this kind of urge to control and to dictate and to impose power in a way that is very kind of hierarchical. And again, with that kind of Sabian symbol speaking to the urge to kind of rally people, and maybe just like the shadow sides of kind of imposing power on other people. Again, themes of power where we can always expect with Pluto on the ascendant. Themes about power and the abuse of power. Maybe we can see if any other messages want to come out. Let's see. What are some themes around this Sagittarius full moon? And I will say, just generally with, we have another Knight coming out. So we have the Knight of Wands, and the Knight of Swords. And you can see these just like kind of urgent figures rushing through these landscapes with weapons or kind of things outstretched. Like a lot of movement, a lot of energy, a lot of dynamism, a lot of feeling like you need to go into a new territory and assert yourself. What was I saying? Oh, yes. So I will say just generally around a lot of full moons, as it literally represents an opposition where the luminaries are 180 degrees exactly at the time of the exactlination apart from each other in the sky. And so a lot of the times full moons generally we kind of have this idea in the zeitgeist around conflict with others, kind of drama, and kind of with the opposition. A lot of times the energetics will play out in relationships with other people, where other people are kind of mirroring back to us, maybe more subconscious or just kind of patterns that continue to play out. They're more obvious when we have another person to reflect those things back to us. But especially in this chart, I will say, this feels like a very relationally informed full moon. So just kind of watching your reactions and impulses to the people closest to you, and just kind of being curious about that. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to share. Feel free to write in the comments below any observations that you're observing, kind of sitting on as we approach the full moon, which is in just a few days now, which is really cool. Yeah, I'm curious to see how some of these things are going to play out. It seems pretty explosive. So yeah, if you'd like to book a personal natal chart reading with me, you can reach out at projectvenusrising, all lowercase, all one word, at gmail.com, and I'll have that written in the description box below. My books are open for the month of June, and I hope you have a beautiful day.